They say trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. I learned that lesson when my wife's phone lit up during dinner with a message that made her choke on McDonald's fries. Why did next cost me a 22-year marriage, but save my empire? Some men forgive. Others make sure the betrayal never happens again. My name is David Patterson, though most folks call me Dave. I'm 55 years old, and I've spent the last 28 years building Patterson Properties from nothing into one of the most respected real estate companies in Phoenix. Started with a single office and a beat-up Ford pickup. Now I've got 47 agents working under me and properties worth over $50 million in my portfolio. 22 years ago, I married Regina Walsh. She was 28 then, working as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup downtown. Beautiful woman with auburn hair that caught the light just right and a smile that could stop traffic. We met at a charity auction where I was bidding on commercial lots, and she was there representing her company. One look at her, and I knew I wanted to spend my life making her happy. Our son Marcus is 20 now, studying business at Arizona State. Smart kid, looks just like his mother, but has my stubborn streak. Our daughter Sarah just turned 18 and graduated high school last month. She's planning to study interior design, says she wants to work with me someday and help stage our properties. The thought of that always made me proud. Regina stopped working when Marcus was born. We agreed it made sense financially, and honestly, with my business taking off, we didn't need her income. She threw herself into being a mother, then later into charity work and social committees. The Phoenix Women's Club, the Children's Hospital Fundraising Board, organizing neighborhood events. She was good at it, had a natural way with people. But somewhere along the way, things started changing. Not all at once, mind you. It was subtle, like watching paint fade in the sun. You don't notice it day by day, but one morning you wake up and realize everything looks different. It started about 8 months ago. Regina joined this new fitness club downtown, one of those high-end places with personal trainers and juice bars. Said she needed to get back in shape now that the kids were older. Fair enough, I thought. Lord knows I could stand to lose a few pounds myself, though my construction background keeps me in decent shape for a man my age. Then she started working with a personal trainer named Mike Harrison. Mid-40s, she said, former college athlete who really understood fitness. She'd come home energized from her sessions, talking about new workout routines and nutrition plans. Started buying expensive workout clothes, getting her nails done more often. Again, nothing that raised any red flags. A woman wanting to look good for herself. That's normal, right? The late-night phone call started in February. "Oh, that's just Lisa from the charity committee," she'd say, stepping out onto the back patio to take the call. "We're planning the spring gala." But Lisa was my business partner Tom's wife, and when I mentioned Regina's dedication to the planning, Lisa looked confused. "What gala?" she'd asked. "We're not doing anything until fall." That's when the little alarm bells started going off in my head. The changes in Regina became more obvious as spring rolled into summer. She started spending more time getting ready in the mornings, trying on different outfits like she was preparing for something important. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her fuss over her appearance this much, not even when we went to fancy charity galas. "Where are you headed today?" I asked one Thursday morning, watching her apply lipstick for the third time. "Just the gym, then lunch with Jennifer," Regina replied, not meeting my eyes in the bathroom mirror. Jennifer was her friend from a women's club, but when I'd run into Jennifer's husband Mark at the hardware store the previous weekend, he mentioned Jennifer was visiting her sister in California that week. I didn't call her out on it. Not yet. But I started paying closer attention. Regina's phone became her constant companion. She'd take it to the bathroom, keep it face down during dinner, and jump every time it buzzed. When I asked who was texting her so much, she'd wave it off as just the girls planning events or mom being chatty. But her mother had passed away 3 years ago, something Regina seemed to forget in her flustered state. The late workouts started next. "Mike thinks I need more intensive training," she'd say, grabbing her gym bag at 7 in the evening. "He's staying late to work with me." These sessions lasted until almost 10 o'clock, and she'd come home with barely a hair out of place. Strange for someone who'd supposedly been doing intensive cardio. Our son Marcus noticed it too when he came home for a weekend visit. "Mom seems different," he said, helping me grill burgers on Saturday afternoon. "She's always checking her phone, and she barely asked about my classes." "She's just going through something," I told him, though I wasn't sure what that something was yet. The real kicker came on a Tuesday evening in June. I'd gotten home early from showing a commercial property and decided to surprise Regina with dinner from her favorite Italian place. The house was empty, but her car was in the driveway. I found her out by the pool, talking on the phone in a voice I'd never heard before, soft, intimate, like she was talking to a lover. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow," she was saying. "This is getting harder to hide." I stepped back into the house before she could see me, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. 22 years of marriage, and my wife was talking to another man like I didn't exist. The dinner got cold on the kitchen counter while I sat in my study, trying to figure out what the hell was happening to my life. When Regina came inside 20 minutes later, she kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "Oh, you're home early. That's nice, honey." I looked at this woman I'd loved for over 2 decades and realized I was looking at a stranger. I decided to stop playing games and start getting answers. That Thursday evening, I suggested we order takeout from McDonald's, something we hadn't done in years, but Regina had mentioned craving their fries earlier that week. She seemed surprised but agreed, probably thinking it was just me being spontaneous. We sat at our dining room table with the bags of food between us, Regina picking at her fries while scrolling through her phone. I was telling her about a new commercial development I was considering when her phone buzzed with a text message. The color drained from Regina's face as she read it. Her hand started shaking slightly, and she quickly turned the phone face down on the table. "Everything all right?" I asked, keeping my voice casual while my gut twisted. "Just Jennifer being dramatic about some committee thing," Regina said, but she couldn't hide the panic in her eyes. I reached across the table and grabbed her phone before she could react. The message was still on the screen, and what I read made my blood run cold. "Your husband is a fool, Regina. Run away with me tonight. I can't stand watching you waste your life with him anymore." The text was from Mike Harrison. "What the hell is this?" I said, my voice deadly quiet. Regina looked like she was about to throw up. She grabbed for the phone, but I held it away from her. "Dave, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're planning to run away with your personal trainer." I stood up, towering over her. "How long has this been going on?" "It's not what you think," Regina stammered, tears starting to flow. "We're just friends. He's been helping me through some personal issues." "Friends?" I held up the phone. "This message says otherwise." I started typing a response on her phone. "My husband just read your message. You might want to find a new gym." The moment I hit send, Regina started choking on the McDonald's fry she'd been nervously chewing. She coughed and sputtered, reaching for her water glass with shaking hands. 22 years, I said, watching her struggle to catch her breath. 22 years of marriage, and this is what it comes to. When she finally stopped coughing, Regina looked up at me with mascara running down her cheeks. "Dave, please, let me explain everything." But I was already walking toward my study to call my lawyer. Some things don't need explaining. The next morning, Regina tried to act like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed while getting dressed, and kissed my cheek goodbye like we hadn't just discovered her affair 12 hours earlier. The woman had nerves of steel, I'll give her that. But I wasn't about to let this slide. 23 years in real estate had taught me the value of gathering all the facts before making any major decisions. This was the biggest decision of my life, and I intended to handle it right. First stop was my lawyer's office. Richard Coleman had handled all my business contracts for the past 15 years, and I trusted him to keep things confidential while I figured out my next move. "Dave, I'm sorry you're going through this," Richard said after I explained the situation. "But you're smart to gather evidence before confronting her directly. Arizona is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact property division, especially with the assets you've built. What do you need from me?" "Documentation, photos, messages, financial records showing money spent on this affair. The more evidence you have, the stronger your position." I spent the rest of the day reviewing our credit card statements and bank records. What I found made my stomach turn. Hotel charges I didn't recognize, expensive dinners for two while I was supposedly working late, even charges at lingerie stores. Regina had been funding her affair with our joint accounts, probably thinking I'd never notice among all the business expenses. That afternoon, I drove to the gym where Mike Harrison worked. Platinum Fitness was one of those upscale places with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive equipment. I sat in my truck across the street and waited. At 3:47 p.m., Regina's car pulled into the parking lot. 15 minutes later, a man emerged from the building and got into a silver BMW. Mid-40s, like Regina had said, but built like someone who'd never done a day of real work in his life. Pretty boy type with perfect hair and an expensive watch. I followed him home to a fancy apartment complex in Scottsdale. The kind of place where the rent cost more than most people made in a month. Either personal training paid better than I thought, or Mike Harrison had other sources of income. Back home that evening, Regina was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept glancing at her phone, but no messages came through. Mike had apparently got my message loud and clear. "How was your workout today?" I asked, cutting into my steak. "Fine," Regina replied, not meeting my eyes. "Just the usual routine." I nodded and continued eating, letting her think she'd gotten away with it. Tomorrow, I'd start phase 2 of my investigation. By the time I was done, I'd know everything about Mike Harrison and exactly how far this affair had gone. Knowledge, as they say, is power, and I intended to have all the power when this thing finally exploded. Monday morning, I told Regina I had property inspections all day and wouldn't be home until evening. Instead, I parked down the street from our house and waited. At 10:30 a.m., she backed out of our driveway wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something red and fitted that definitely wasn't gym attire. I followed her to a coffee shop downtown, staying far enough back to avoid detection. Through the window, I watched her meet Mike Harrison at a corner table. The way they greeted each other, hands lingering, intimate smiles, him touching her face like he had every right to, made my blood boil. I took photos with my phone, documenting everything. The timestamps would be crucial for my lawyer. After an hour, they left separately. Regina headed home, while Mike drove to what looked like a residential area in North Phoenix. Tuesday, I hired a private investigator named Tony Rodriguez, former Phoenix PD, highly recommended by my lawyer. "I need complete background on this guy," I told Tony, handing him Mike's information. "Financial records, employment history, personal relationships, everything." "What's your timeline?" Tony asked. "Yesterday would be good, but I'll take whatever you can get me in a week." Wednesday brought the first real surprise. Tony called with preliminary findings. "Your wife's boyfriend has some interesting financial problems," he said. "Mike Harrison filed for bankruptcy 18 months ago. Credit cards maxed out, behind on rent, the works. But suddenly, 3 months ago, he starts making regular deposits to his checking account. Always cash, always the same amount, $1,500 every 2 weeks. Regina's been giving him money," I said, pieces clicking into place. "Looks that way. Also, Harrison's got a history. This isn't his first married client. I found 2 other women in the past 3 years, both divorced now. Seems our boy has a pattern of targeting wealthy, lonely wives." That evening, I confronted Regina indirectly. "Honey, I noticed some unusual charges on our credit card. Cash advances totaling about $3,000 a month for the past few months. Everything okay?" Regina's face flushed. "Oh, that's just... I've been helping out the animal shelter. They needed donations, and I thought cash would be easier for them." Another lie. I called the animal shelter the next morning. They had no record of any donations from Regina Patterson. Thursday, I decided to get closer to Mike Harrison. I called Platinum Fitness and scheduled a consultation for personal training, giving a fake name. The receptionist scheduled me with Mike for Friday afternoon. Walking into that gym, seeing the man who was destroying my marriage, took every ounce of self-control I had. Mike was exactly what I'd expected, smooth, confident, the kind of guy who'd never worked with his hands or built anything real in his life. "So, what are your fitness goals?" Mike asked, clipboard in hand. "I want to be strong enough to handle any situation that comes my way," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. Mike gave me his practice smile, completely oblivious to who I was. We spent an hour going through exercises while I memorized his routine, his schedule, and most importantly, his arrogance. This was a man who thought he was untouchable, who believed he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. By Friday evening, I had everything I needed to destroy both of them. Saturday morning, I implemented my plan. Regina had mentioned she was meeting the girls for brunch, which I now knew meant she was seeing Mike. I waited until she left, then used her laptop to access her email account. She'd never been good with passwords, always using variations of our kids' names. What I found in her deleted messages folder was a goldmine. Months of correspondence with Mike, discussing everything from their sexual encounters to plans for Regina to leave me. The most damaging email was from 2 weeks ago, where Mike outlined his financial troubles and Regina promised to help him get back on his feet with money from our joint accounts. I forwarded everything to my personal email, then deleted the sent messages so Regina wouldn't know what I'd found. Next, I crafted the perfect trap. Using Regina's phone while she was in the shower that evening, I sent Mike a message. Dave's going out of town tomorrow night for business. Come to the house at 8 p.m. I want you in my bed for once instead of those cheap hotels. Mike's response came back within minutes. Finally, I've been wanting to see where you live. Can't wait to have you properly. The arrogance was stunning. This man thought he was going to waltz into my home and sleep with my wife in my bed. I spent Sunday preparing. Moved the furniture in the living room to create clear sight lines, tested the lighting to make sure everything would be visible, and set up my phone to record video. Then I called my old friend Jake Morrison, who ran security for several local businesses. Jake, I need a favor. Can you come by tomorrow night around 8:30? Bring Tommy if he's available. I might need witnesses to what's about to happen. Everything all right, Dave? Let's just say I'm about to close a deal that's been in negotiation for months. Monday evening, I told Regina I was driving to Tucson for an early morning property showing, just like she expected. Instead, I parked my truck 3 blocks away and walked back through the neighbor's yard. At 7:55 p.m., I was positioned in my darkened living room, phone recording, waiting for Mike Harrison to make the biggest mistake of his life. The front door opened at exactly 8 p.m. Mike stepped inside, calling out softly, "Regina, where are you, beautiful?" I switched on the lamp. "Regina's not here," I said, standing up slowly. "But I've been waiting to meet you properly." The look on Mike's face, shock, fear, and dawning realization, was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. "You must be the fool," I continued, stepping closer. "At least, that's what you call me in your message." Mike stumbled backward toward the door, but Jake and Tommy were already coming up the front steps, blocking his escape route. Time for this predator to learn what consequences looked like. Mike Harrison stood frozen in my living room like a deer caught in headlights. Jake and Tommy blocked the doorway behind him while I approached slowly, letting the full weight of the situation sink in. "Sit down, Mike," I said, gesturing to the armchair. "We need to have a conversation about boundaries." "Look, Mr. Patterson, this is all a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I interrupted, "is you thinking you could waltz into my house and sleep with my wife without consequences. 22 years of marriage, and you thought you'd just take over." Mike glanced nervously at Jake and Tommy, both ex-military guys who looked like they could break him in half without breaking a sweat. "I never meant for things to go this far," Mike stammered. "Regina said you two were having problems, that you barely talked anymore, and you believed her." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Son, let me educate you about something. When a married woman tells you her husband doesn't understand her, that's your cue to walk away, not your invitation to move in." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken of their coffee meetings, the bank records showing Regina's cash advances, the emails discussing their future together. "See, Mike, I've been documenting everything. Your financial troubles, your history with other married women, the money my wife's been giving you. You're not her salvation. You're a predator." Mike's face went white. "How did you know about your pattern? About the other wives you've destroyed? I run a real estate empire, boy. I know how to research an investment before I make a decision. And you? You're a bad investment that's about to be foreclosed." I leaned down until we were eye to eye. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear from Regina's life. Block her number, quit the gym if you have to, but you're done with my wife. You can't make me." Jake stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Mike. "Actually, he can. See, we've got all those financial records showing you've been essentially blackmailing a married woman for money. That's a felony in Arizona." "It wasn't blackmail," Mike protested. "She gave me that money willingly." "Did she?" I pulled out more documents. "Because according to these bank records, you told her you'd expose your relationship unless she helped with your debts. That sounds like extortion to me." Mike's shoulders sagged as he realized how thoroughly trapped he was. "Stand up," I ordered. "You're leaving my house, and you're never coming back. If I see you within a mile of my wife or my property, these documents go to the police and your employer." "Understood." Mike nodded rapidly, sweat beading on his forehead. "Good. Tommy's going to escort you to your car, and make sure you understand the geographic boundaries of this arrangement. As they left, I turned to Jake. Thanks for backing me up. Anytime, brother. That punk needed to learn some respect. Now came the hard part, dealing with Regina. Regina came home at 10:30 p.m., expecting to find the house empty and Mike waiting for her in our bedroom. Instead, she found me sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey and divorce papers on the coffee table. "Dave," she called out, confusion evident in her voice. "I thought you were in Tucson." "Change of plans," I said without looking up. "We need to talk." Regina approached cautiously, her eyes darting around the room. She could sense something was wrong, but hadn't figured out what yet. "Where's your boyfriend?" I asked, taking a sip of whiskey. "My what?" "Dave, I don't know what you're talking about." I held up my phone, showing her the message she'd sent to Mike earlier. "Your lover boy came by around 8. We had an enlightening conversation about respect and consequences." The color drained from Regina's face. "Oh God, Dave, what did you do?" "What I should have done months ago." I stood up, my full height making her step back. "I protected my family and my assets from a predator and his accomplice." "It's not what you think," Regina started, tears beginning to flow. "Mike and we're just friends. He's been helping me through some emotional issues." "Stop." My voice cut through her lies like a blade. "I've seen the emails, Regina. I know about the money you've been stealing from our accounts to support his lifestyle. I know about the hotels, the lies, all of it." Regina collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "Dave, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake. I love you, I love our family. You love the stability I provided, I corrected. You love the lifestyle, the house, the social status. But you didn't love me enough to honor the vows you made 22 years ago." I picked up the divorce papers and set them in front of her. "Richard Coleman drew these up this afternoon. You can read through them, but the summary is simple. You get what you brought into this marriage, minus what you stole to fund your affair. You can't do this to me." Regina's voice turned desperate. "Half of everything we built is mine. The house, the business, the investments. Actually, I can. Arizona may be a no-fault state, but adultery still impacts asset division when one spouse has been systematically stealing marital funds. Also, you might want to read our prenup more carefully." Regina's eyes widened. "The prenup was just a formality. Your lawyer said." "My lawyer said adultery voided your claim to business assets and property acquired before marriage. This house, my company, most of our investments, all protected." I walked to the window, looking out the life we'd built together. "Marcus and Sarah are adults now. They'll understand why their mother chose to destroy our family for a fitness instructor with a bankruptcy record." "The kids don't need to know," Regina pleaded. "We can keep this private." "Too late for that. Mike's little blackmail scheme involved using your name on financial documents. That makes you complicit in fraud." I turned back to face her, my decision final. "Pack your things, Regina. I want you out of my house by tomorrow evening." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore," I said, heading toward the stairs. "You made your choice. Now live with it." 3 weeks after Regina moved out, Marcus and Sarah came home to help sort through what remained of our family. I told them the truth about their mother's affair, and while they were hurt and angry, they understood why I couldn't forgive her betrayal. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" Sarah asked as we packed up Regina's remaining belongings. "I mean, financially and everything." "More than okay," I assured her. "The prenup protected most of our assets, and the business is stronger than ever. Your college funds are safe, and so is your inheritance." Marcus found Regina's jewelry box in the bedroom and held it up questioningly. "What do we do with this stuff?" "Keep what has sentimental value from your childhood," I said. "The rest goes with her." The divorce moved quickly once Regina realized she had no leverage. Richard Coleman's documentation was thorough, and her lawyer advised her to accept the settlement rather than fight a losing battle. She got her personal belongings, her car, and enough money to get an apartment and start over. Everything else stayed with me. Mike Harrison had disappeared completely. According to my sources at Platinum Fitness, he'd quit without notice and left town. Probably moved on to find another wealthy, lonely wife in some other city. Good riddance. Regina tried calling several times in those first weeks, alternating between apologies and anger. The apology calls went like this: "Dave, I made a terrible mistake. Can we try counseling? Think about our family, our history together. The angry calls were more revealing. You're destroying my life over one mistake. 22 years should count for something. You're being vindictive and cruel. I stopped answering after the fifth call. My real estate business actually improved once word got out about what had happened. Men in Phoenix respected a guy who stood up for himself, and several new clients came to me specifically because they'd heard how I'd handled the situation. You did what needed doing, Tom Bradley told me over beers one evening. Tom owned the largest construction company in the valley and had become a close friend over the years. A man's got to protect what he's built, especially from people who'd tear it down for their own selfish reasons. The hardest part was sleeping alone in the house where we'd raised our children. Some nights, I'd walk through the rooms and remember better times. Sarah taking her first steps in the living room, Marcus graduating high school in the backyard, Regina laughing at something silly I'd said during our early years together. But then I'd remember the lies, the stolen money, the complete disrespect for everything we'd built, and the loneliness would fade into something harder, something that felt like relief. I wasn't the same man I'd been 6 months ago. I was stronger, more careful, and definitely less trusting. But I was also free. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my home office reviewing the quarterly reports for Patterson Properties. Revenue was up 18%. We'd acquired 3 new commercial developments, and I'd just hired 2 additional agents to handle the increased business. Sarah had decided to take a gap year before college and was working with me part-time, learning the business from the ground up. She had a natural eye for staging properties and an intuitive understanding of what buyers wanted. "Dad, there's a woman here to see you," Sarah called from the front office. "Says it's about the Thunderbird property." I walked out to find an attractive woman in her early 40s, professionally dressed, with intelligent eyes and a confident handshake. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm interested in the Thunderbird commercial space for my consulting business." We spent an hour discussing her needs, and I found myself genuinely impressed by her business plan and her straightforward approach to negotiations. No games, no manipulation, just honest communication about what she wanted and what she could afford. "I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow," I told her as we concluded our meeting. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I appreciate you taking the time to understand my business." After she left, Sarah looked at me with a knowing smile. She seemed nice. "She's a potential client, Sarah. Nothing more." "Sure, Dad. But you smiled more in that hour than you have in months." Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe it was time to consider that life might hold possibilities I hadn't imagined. But I'd learned some hard lessons about trust and judgment. If I ever decided to let someone new into my life, it would be on my terms, with my eyes wide open. That evening, I sat on my back patio with a glass of good whiskey, watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of gold and crimson. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for years. No more lies, no more deception, no more wondering if the woman sleeping next to me was planning to destroy everything I'd worked for. Regina had texted me earlier that week from her new apartment across town, asking if we could meet for coffee to discuss our future. I deleted the message without responding. We had no future to discuss. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hey, Dad. Bringing a girl home for Thanksgiving. Hope that's okay." I smiled and typed back, looking forward to meeting her. Life was moving forward, and so was I. The man who had trusted blindly was gone, replaced by someone stronger and wiser. Someone who knew the difference between love and manipulation, between partnership and parasitism. It had cost me a marriage, but it had saved my soul. At 55, I was starting over. And for the first time in months, that felt like an opportunity rather than a loss.